Hey, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. Joji, born George Kusunoki Miller, has carved a distinctive space in the musical landscape as one of the most emotionally intelligent artists of the modern era. Emerging from his viral beginnings on YouTube as Filthy Frank and Pink Guy, Joji's transition into a serious musician wasn't just unexpected, it was seismic. His music, steeped in melancholy, longing and self-awareness, defies the trends of surface-level pop by tapping into something far deeper, emotional authenticity. Joji doesn't simply sing about heartbreak or isolation, he embodies them, his voice often trembling with quiet pain, resignation, or a kind of numbed introspection that many listeners can instantly connect with. His vulnerability is never exaggerated, never performative, but instead, it's laid bare in minimalistic lyrics, atmospheric production, and haunting vocal delivery that somehow manages to be both fragile and immersive. Whether he's whispering over ambient lo-fi beats, or stretching his falsetto over moody synth layers, Joji masterfully expresses emotions that feel tangled, conflicted, and deeply human. What makes Joji's music emotionally intelligent isn't just the raw feelings he captures, it's the subtlety with which he does it. He understands that emotion isn't always loud, often it's quiet, confused, and hard to define. His songwriting reflects this nuance, with rather than crafting narratives that are neatly resolved, he leans into ambiguity, allowing space for the listener to interpret or even project their own feelings onto the songs. Tracks like Dancing in the Dark or Glimpse of Us aren't just sad, they're introspective dissections of moments that linger unresolved within our very soul. This emotional ambiguity, paired with a moody production, amplifies a sense of psychological weight, allowing Joji to express complex emotional states without needing to spell them out. It's this quiet sophistication, his ability to make sadness, nostalgia, loneliness, and yearning feel elegant and intimate, that defines his music's emotional intelligence and makes his sound resonate so powerfully within a generation attuned to internal struggles. As mentioned previously in the introduction, Joji's musical career is all the more compelling because of its bizarre and rather unorthodox origin story. Long before he was serenading millions with emotionally charged ballads, George Miller was one of the internet's most chaotic and influential personalities, best known as Filthy Frank. With his grotesque humor, surreal sketches, and absolute disregard for conventional content norms, Filthy Frank quickly became a cult figure on YouTube. His channel was a deliberate rejection of polished, family-friendly content that was dominating the platform during the early 2010s. Miller managed to create an absurd world populated by eccentric characters, none more famous than Filthy Frank himself, a grotesque, loudmouth provocateur who thrived on anti-humor, satire, and boundary-pushing comedy. The character became a cultural phenomenon, helping pioneer a new kind of edgelord comedy that spoke to a disillusioned and meme-hungry audience. But Filthy Frank wasn't just the only alter ego that George brought to life. Alongside Frank came Pink Guy, a bizarre, high-pitched and spandex-wearing side character who eventually became a musical project of his own. As Pink Guy, George released albums filled with comedic and wildly experimental tracks, blending trap beats, nonsensical lyrics, and satirical takes on contemporary music trends. What's more, even during his comedic phase, there were occasional glimpses of a more introspective side to George, with tracks like Fried Noodles and We Fall Again subtly hinting at the more vulnerable and artistically serious direction he would one day embrace. Despite the massive popularity of his YouTube persona, George grew increasingly wary of the mental and physical toll that his content was having on him. The chaos of Filthy Frank was a character, yes, but it came from a deeply real place, one that required him to constantly push himself to the brink for laughs. The shift from YouTube to music wasn't sudden or impulsive, it was the result of years of internal conflict and the desire to evolve into something more honest and emotionally sustainable. George knew that in order to grow, he had to leave behind the internet persona that had made him famous. It was a bold and risky move to be sure, and one that could have easily backfired in an industry that often refuses to take internet creators seriously. But Joji wasn't just another YouTuber trying to make music, he was an artist with a vision that had been quietly forming beneath the surface and chaos and noise for years. When George officially retired from his YouTube persona all the way back in 2017, nearly a decade ago now, and emerged as Joji, many of his longtime fans were shocked, intrigued, and even skeptical. But rather than chase viral fame or cater to existing expectations, JOJI doubled down on vulnerability and authenticity. The transition was jarring, moving from intentionally offensive skits to slow melancholic R&B tracks, but it was also a revelation. As JOJI, George was no longer hiding behind satire or alter egos. He was finally making music that reflected who he truly was and what he truly felt. His departure from Filthy Frank wasn't a rejection of his past, but an evolution beyond it. That willingness to shed his skin, to leave behind a world that made him famous in order to chase a more honest form of self-expression, set the emotional tone that would define his entire music career. This reinvention wasn't just rare, it was emotionally courageous, and it laid the foundation for JOJI to become one of, if not the most emotionally intelligent voices in modern music. JOJI's emergence as a serious artist marked a profound creative rebirth. When he stepped away from the chaotic comedy of Filthy Frank and the ridiculous antics of Pink Guy, he wasn't just pivoting genres, he was redefining his entire identity. His early music releases under the JOJI moniker include singles like Will He and Demons, stunned audiences who were expecting more parody or absurdity. Instead, they were met with subdued, melancholic tracks filled with haunting vocals, lo-fi textures, and introspective lyrics. These songs weren't polished in the conventional pop sense, but they were rich with emotional depth. There was a pain in his voice, uncertainty in his tone, and a vulnerability that sharply contrasted the aggressive energy that he was previously known for. This raw, emotional honesty was not only refreshing, it had signaled that JOJI had something real to say, and he was finally ready to say it through music, not comedy. His first official project, In Tongues 2017, served as JOJI's formal introduction to the music world. The EP was starked in murky production, lo-fi R&B aesthetics, and a sense of emotional ambiguity that invited listeners to linger in its atmosphere. While not a massive commercial success at the time, In Tongues was deeply personal and subtly groundbreaking. The project wasn't designed to impress the mainstream, but to connect with people on a quieter, more introspective feel. JOJI wasn't trying to be a pop star, he was trying to express and process, and that's what made the music feel so emotionally intelligent. It didn't offer easy answers or resolve into upbeat hooks, it sat in the discomfort, in the in-betweens, where real emotions are often felt and lived. JOJI's appeal grew not because he followed trends, but because he decided to subvert them. While much of modern music prioritized flash, catchiness, and virality, JOJI leaned into restraint. He wasn't afraid of silence, of space, or of letting a feeling hang unresolved. His voice, often breathy and broken, didn't strive for perfection. Instead, it prioritized authenticity. That sense of fragility became one of his signature traits. Listeners didn't just hear JOJI's songs, they felt them. He crafted a sound that was unpolished but refined, intimate yet universal. In many ways, JOJI tapped into the collective consciousness of a generation that was learning to embrace mental health awareness, emotional openness, and the complexity of human experience. His music didn't just scream for attention, it whispered it, and in doing so, it created a deep emotional resonance that commercial polish often lacks. By the time JOJI released his debut studio album, In Ballads 1, in 2018, he had fully established himself as an artist worth taking seriously. The album was a significant step forward for JOJI, both in terms of production quality and the emotional scope. Tracks like Slow Dancing in the Dark became viral hits, not because of shock value, but because they tapped into universal feelings of heartbreak, regret, and emotional confusion. The project felt like a culmination of all JOJI had been building up to, a collection of heartbreak anthems that were equal parts ethereal and devastating. Ballads 1 wasn't just an album, it was a statement of intent. JOJI had shed his past personas, not to escape them, but to grow beyond them, and in doing so he became one of the few artists of his generation whose evolution felt not only authentic but necessary, a journey from chaos to clarity, from parody to poetry. JOJI's debut EP, In Tongues 2017, is the quiet storm that began it all, a minimalist yet emotionally potent project that signaled JOJI's sincere transformation from internet comedian to introspective musician. What made In Tongues so incredible wasn't necessarily its technical complexity, but the raw emotional atmosphere it cultivated. Every track carried a sense of stillness and isolation, as if Joji was singing from within a dimly lit room in his mind. Songs like Will He and World Star Money Interlude weren't structured like typical radio singles. They were slow, often repetitive, and drenched in haunting ambience. And that was the point. In Tongues refused to follow mainstream formulas, instead opting to express vulnerability through subtlety. There's something deeply intelligent about how Joji left so much unsaid in these songs, trusting listeners to fill in with the emotional gaps themselves. The sadness wasn't melodramatic, it was rather restrained, nuanced, and deeply human, showcasing an artist who already understood that emotional weight doesn't have to be loud to be heavy. With ballads, Joji took everything he had built in Tongues and refined it, both emotionally and sonically. The emotional intelligence of Ballads 1 lies in how it captures a wide range of complex feelings. Songs like Slow Dancing in the Dark remains one of his most powerful songs to date. Elsewhere, tracks like Yeah Right explored toxic cycles of self-sabotage wrapped in deceptively upbeat melodies. What makes this album so mature is Joji's refusal to paint himself as a victim or a hero. He presents emotional chaos as it is, messy, unresolved, and deeply personal. It isn't about closure or redemption, it's about living in the grey area, and that's what makes it so relatable. Joji's third project, Nectar 2020, marked an ambitious leap into scope and ambition. It's a sprawling album that explores love, detachment, and existential unease, and the growing pains of fame, all while experimenting with broader production styles. Despite its more polished and expansive sound, Nectar retains Joji's core emotional DNA. Every track feels steeped in vulnerability, even as he ventures into new sonic territory. Songs like Run showcase his vocal growth and songwriting evolution, pairing soaring guitar solos with aching lyrical reflections. Meanwhile, Ill opens the album, beautifully orchestrated lament, perfectly setting the emotional tone. Then came Smithereens 2022, Joji's most understated yet perhaps emotionally revealing project to date. Split into two halves, one focusing on stripped-down ballads and the other on more experimental, beat-driven tracks, Smithereens is an exploration of emotional duality. Tracks like Glimpse of Us cut straight through with their simplicity, relying almost entirely on piano and Joji's raw, aching vocal delivery. It's a song that says so much with so little, exemplifying emotional maturity through restraint. He doesn't beg for sympathy, he reflects, confesses, and lets silence do much of the talking. The second half of the album leans more into introspective mood pieces, continuing Joji's tradition of emotional intelligent ambiguity. Smithereens doesn't strive to be bigger or louder than its predecessors, it dares to be quieter, more reflective, and perhaps more personal. In a musical world that often mistakes vulnerability for melodrama, Joji's discography, culminating in this thoughtfully, beautifully broken record, proves that emotional maturity isn't always about grandeur, it's about knowing when to whisper instead of scream. As Joji's music continued to mature and reach deeper emotional layers, so too did his popularity steadily expand, culminating in moments of cultural recognition that signaled his undeniable place among the most emotionally resonant artists of his generation. One of the most significant recent spikes in attention came when his song Your Man was used in the acclaimed Amazon Prime series Invincible. In a show already known for its shocking emotional twists and brutal storytelling, Joji's ballad added a new layer of enjoyment. The placement wasn't just a good musical choice, it was a perfect narrative fit, seamlessly weaving Joji's signature musical creativity into the narrative of Invincible. For many viewers, this scene served as a gateway into Joji's music, prompting searches, streams, and conversations about who this artist was and why his song was so damn fitting. It wasn't just exposure, it was a reintroduction of Joji to the world. This time not as a former YouTube persona, but as an emotionally intelligent artist with universal reach. The use of Your Man in Invincible demonstrated something that fans had known for years. Joji's music doesn't just exist, it lingers and becomes memorable. While other artists ride the wave of trends, Joji moves at his own pace, creating music that's introspective, timeless, and emotionally rich. The Invincible moment wasn't just a career highlight, it was a symbolic shift in how Joji's music is being received. What began as lo-fi heartbreak anthems in the corners of YouTube is now being recognized as powerful storytelling, worth of major narrative moments within popular culture. And this recognition isn't limited to television features or streaming successes. Joji's rise reflects a changing landscape in music consumption, where emotional honesty and vulnerability are no longer niche, but deeply sought after. Younger artists cite him as an influence, and longtime fans feel seen through the evolution of his sound. What's unique about Joji's popularity is that it never feels forced or overly marketed. There's a sincerity to his artistry that transcends traditional paths to fame. He has built a career not on gimmicks or hype, but on slow-burning trust. Listeners return to his music because it continues to meet them where they are emotionally, no matter how much time has passed. Looking forward, the future of Joji feels both exciting and open-ended. He is an artist who has proven he can evolve without losing his core identity. Whether he continues to experiment with genre, explores even more stripped-down vulnerability, or collaborates with other emotionally driven creators, there's little doubt that Joji will continue crafting music that resonates on a deeply human level. His journey from chaos to satire to somber reflection already feels like one of the most fascinating artistic evolutions of the modern era. Joji's musical journey is a masterclass in evolution, one marked not by a rebranding, but by a sincere and courageous peeling back of layers. What makes his artistry so emotionally intelligent is the quiet, deliberate refusal to conform to what is expected. He doesn't chase virality anymore. Instead, he leans into the emotional complexities that define the human condition: heartache, nostalgia, regret, self-awareness, and the bittersweet beauty of vulnerability. Joji has proven that emotional depth isn't just a thematic choice, it's the very foundation of his sound. In a world increasingly dominated by noise, Joji's quiet, sorrow-laced voice stands out like a lighthouse, but emotionally adrift, offering comfort not through answers, but through shared understanding. As he continues to earn recognition across mediums, whether through powerful placements in shows like Invincible, or through the unshakable connection his fanbase feels, Joji's legacy as one of the most emotionally intelligent artists of his generation becomes even more cemented. The future holds limitless potential for Joji, whether he dives deeper into intimate ballads, expands into cinematic storytelling, or ventures into even more experimental soundscapes. Whatever direction Joji decides to go with, one truth will remain constant: he has redefined what it means to be vulnerable in music. And in doing so, he has given his audience not just songs, but mirrors to better understand themselves.